Hey guys, today I'm going to give you a glimpse into my head and perhaps you'll have a better perspective at how I think about morality. And hopefully it's an approach you guys will find useful too. I like to call this idea the moral hierarchy. And before we jump into the good stuff and get to that, I want to first talk about our personal value hierarchies. That terminology may be a bit confusing, but it's actually a pretty simple concept. We can even think of it in terms of ice cream, actually. So my personal values, ranked on the hierarchy, would say that mint chocolate chip is at the very top for me. That's my favorite flavor of ice cream, and if I have a choice, that's the one I'm going to choose. Now, in second place would be a tie between chocolate and strawberry. I like both of those equally, but I like both of them better than vanilla. And all the other flavors as well will just equate with vanilla. So for me, vanilla is good, but chocolate and strawberry are both better than that, and a mint chocolate chip is the highest of all. So this idea of a value hierarchy is really just like a chart that we can use to rank our preferences. And I like to picture it as a triangle. In my head it comes out looking kind of like a food pyramid. But it doesn't have to look like a triangle, unfortunately. It can be a bit more complicated than that. As we can see with my preference for jelly beans. I really like the red ones because that's my favorite color. But as far as the green ones and orange ones and blue ones or white ones go, I don't even really know the difference between them. So they're all tied for second place. And an absolute last place would be the black ones, because I basically have to be starving to eat those. I'm not sure if it's subconscious racism or if I just really don't like licorice. I'll let you guys decide. But the point is that that one doesn't look like a triangle. So for simplicity's sake, let's just stick with the triangle for now. And maybe as we progress, we might throw that out the window. Now, this value hierarchy is applied to a lot more than food, which is good because that's how it's going to relate to morality eventually. When it comes to personal values, people often have different values, and the values they do have in common, they often rank them differently. On our personal value hierarchies, we may see things like being healthy, being wealthy, being well-liked, having a healthy family, getting good grades, getting a good job, etc. And my hierarchy is probably going to look a little bit different than yours. So let's try and think about this in terms of morality and see how it relates. Let's take a quick look at two human values. Let's say sexual pleasure. I know I'm looking forward to getting married one day. And human dignity will be the second pleasure. The second value. I know I don't like to treat people as objects. I think humans have rights. And I don't like violating those. So there are at least some people that value both human dignity and sexual pleasure. But unfortunately in America, last year, 2010, over 84,000 people were rape victims. And since that's an underreported crime, the actual number is probably a lot higher. But the point is that clearly some people value sexual pleasure above human dignity. So is rape wrong because it involves valuing sexual pleasure? I would say no. I think it's wrong because it involves valuing sexual pleasure above human dignity. In other words, the problem is having a disordered desire. What the rapist does value is clearly inconsistent with what he should value. What the rapist does value represents his personal value hierarchy, and what he should value represents the moral hierarchy. So immorality can be seen in terms of having a disordered desire. Now, I thought I came up with this whole idea of the moral hierarchy, but it turns out that a philosopher named W.D. Ross beat me to it. And he called it value pluralism. He argued that it's self-evident that certain things ought to be valued, like honesty, trustworthiness, compassion, love, etc. But sometimes we find ourselves in scenarios where those values conflict. For example, we might find ourselves in a scenario where being honest and being loving can't be done simultaneously. If you're hanging out with your friend and an axe murderer knocks on your door and asks if your friend is home, then if you're honest, that wouldn't be very loving because you might be getting your friend killed. And if you're loving, then that would involve telling a lie, which would be dishonest. So if honesty trumps being loving on that moral hierarchy, then you ought to be honest. And if love trumps honesty, then you ought to lie. And if honesty and love are equal, then either action may be morally permissible. But Ross argued that while it may be self-evident that some values are good, it's not self-evident, or not always self-evident, which of those objective values should trump the other when they conflict. So just because it isn't obvious how we ought to behave in every scenario, doesn't make it any less obvious that there are ways that we ought to behave. As always, test everything, hold on to the good.